Okay. A little something different tonight. Um, I talk about a lot of ranting. I rant on a lot of stuff during my gameplay. So I want to do this video because I was watching it. I didn't finish watching it because I was like, this is something that I thought was kind of fresh. That I didn't agree with everything that this guest said on the Sam Cedar show, but I agreed with a lot of what he said, and it definitely made me start thinking a bit. So I was like, well, if I found it a little bit impressive, I thought I might as well do a bit of a stream on it. It is a cheap reaction video to someone else's content. That's what it is, but you gotta start somewhere. I'm gonna probably maybe see how this goes, do a couple of these, and maybe we'll do something a little more, original or something like that. I got ideas for that, but for now, I want to watch and do some discussion on this video because I don't know, I just find it interesting. I mean, we can make fun of some rich people and celebrities or whatever, but it's only so useful. And I think I rant enough about that while I'm doing my game streams on my other thing that I do. So I think this would be more fruitful instead of just watching like fail clips from you know the people in power. Let's skip ahead to where it starts, though. I'm just gonna watch it from the beginning because obviously a lot of people probably haven't seen this yet. Okay.
We are back, Sam Cedar.
This is our guest. I don't remember his name yet. Who do we got here? I think this is him. We'll see in a second. I'm gonna let it play in just a second, but his basic thing is that before World War II, during the interwar period, there is a tremendous amount of achievement and hope for leftist movements to reorganize capitalism. What comes to my mind specifically, is the Social Democrats' success in Germany right before the Reichstag falls. I mean, it is my opinion at the moment that the Social Democrat movement falls specifically because the aristocrats and the military want World War II to happen so that the big changes that are coming in from leftist movements just don't happen. I've watched whole documentaries on that. We don't have time to get into that right now because I got to focus on one thing at a time, and today it'll be this discussion. But that's just basically where I stand on that at the moment. This is what made me so curious because this guy, I'll just let him speak for himself now, so because I don't want to misinterpret his stance too much here, but that's just the basic premise.
The Majority Report, joining myself and Emma Vigland, Professor Vivek Chibber, Professor of Sociology at New York University, author of The Class Matrix, Social Theory After the Cultural Turn. Professor, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, all right, we got this is a sort of an academic read to some extent, but I think it's available to everybody. But I want to walk through, folks. This is, in some ways, a slight.
Is it really like more academic if it's just history focused? I mean, isn't that just like events? Do you need to know like jargon? Maybe his book is like that. I don't know. Because there are a lot of like postmodern theories that use some of Marxist terms that evolve after World War II, and I'm not hyper familiar with any of that, but so maybe that's what they mean, or he was just warning the audience a little bit. I don't know. Anyways,
history of Marxist theory, and where you feel that it certain turns sort of were not successful in addressing a question, which is essentially why, when we have seemingly a broad awareness that capitalism is not working for many, the vast majority of people in our society and in many other societies, why do we still have capitalism? Right? I mean, that is the central question that you are revising or adding to Marxist theory to address?
I'm just gonna throw something out here to answer that question because why not? Obviously, it might not be extremely well put together, but here's just a thought. It's like, and actually, I'm thinking of Andor too a little bit because they have a character in here that has a line that kind of is the same idea. That capitalism has evolved so quickly to a global market that since like the labor has become caught up in a large network, it's really hard for like say like India is the first place that comes to mind for me because there's a lot of cheap labor there and even like debt indentured servants or whatever you'd call them, which is just slaves basically. Just why put a nice word on it doesn't really. It's the same thing. Um, and since this system has evolved so quickly, people have not been able to respond to it because it's not like you just like who's your enemy? You don't really know, right? Like I just throwing that out there randomly. That is not like something I'm set on, but as a brainstorming thing. But anyways,
So let's go back and give us the history of that Marxist theory up until the cultural turn, and tell us what the cultural turn was when we get there.
so they're going to be talking about he claims and is pretty well backed up, I'm sure, that there is people in Marxist theory who put the focus on explaining the failure of leftist movements on cultural and phenomena and lack of ideology. And this is the part that challenges me quite a bit because I feel that like though I would not agree too heavily that most proles like myself, I just use that term because I find it amusing, um have a false consciousness, although that's certainly common. Like a lot of people believe that they're just embarrassed millionaires and they're gonna be an entrepreneur their whole life, and as soon as they can parasite suck rent money off of somebody else, they'll be all good or whatever. And it's a good thing, which I mean, what I just described seems to me to be false consciousness if it's true that people believe that. I believe it's a small group of people, so I'm with this guy on that point. I think it's small group of people. I think most people are pretty aware that the system sucks. That's just how it is. But the part that I have trouble with is I think he will go on to say, we'll see if this is true. I think he might go on to say that lack of ideology is not a problem for like the proles, us, the people in general. And I think it helps, that's just where I stand right now. That's just a gut feeling. I'm not making an academic point on that. I'm just saying that like I have come to this video because it's kind of challenged that assumption that I had, that it helps to have your own ideology and way of thinking, or you get kind of batted around and there's nowhere to go. But he says it's still mostly materialism. And he might even go so far as to say that even creating your own ideology is not even that important. But okay, let's continue.
Yeah, thanks. It's not really just Marxist theory, although addressing the turns within the changes in Marxism is important because for a century, this was the theory that guided the left. But really, for the entire left, there was an understanding for over 100 years that if you want to figure out how to change capitalism and why capitalism is so hard to change, you've got to look at people's material circumstances, the choices that they have, the constraints that they face, and the way in which they try to do the best that they can for themselves in those constraints. Workers being the main object here. So the idea was, look, if workers aren't rising up the way everyone thought they would, it has to be because the choices that they have make it really hard for them.
This makes me think of Marx used to say a lot that there's a huge necessity in the left to provide a shorter work week and education to more working people because he perceived that as like a material barrier because they needed the tools like some free time and some education in order to organize more effectively. All free time being maybe the most important, and like education's obviously like somewhat important, right? That was one of Marx's, I guess you might even call it an excuse as to why the global revolution wasn't really being a thing. But nowadays that seems so much less likely because literacy rates are rising and stuff. So it's like, how much more education are we really looking for? for this to happen. So, and I see why there's some skepticism with it. I don't know. Anyways, let's continue. I don't want to get too bogged down with this because he hasn't even made his full point yet.
Difficult for them to organize around their interests, even though they know that they're being screwed over. Now, that was anarchists believe this, socialists believe this, Marxist socialists believe this, non-Marxist socialists. All the disagreements were about how to go about organizing and what your vision of a humane, just society is. There was no disagreement.
This is just totally an aside, but Z-Books got shut down recently by the FBI. I mean, who else would do it, of course, but which is a website that provides basically free textbooks, and it's stationed in China. And I was just extremely despondent about it, although you can still access the website through Tor browser. So it's not that big of a deal. Anybody who wants real information out there, use a Tor browser, go to Z-Books, get any book you freaking want, get some real information, getting shit off of Google, everything. Like, the top links are based on popularity, not on whether it's correct or deep or anything, or connected to any sort of historical basis or anything. Like, Googling shit is helpful. You can use JSTOR to find like articles, but it's usually paywalled. It fucking sucks. I think everybody knows that it sucks. And that's discouraging. So if anyone out there feels discouraged by how confusing and muddled shit is, I would just go to Z-Books, ZSZBOOKS. Use a Tor browser because it's the only way to access it. Tor browsers, if you don't know, is a browser that works like a normal browser, but it uses peer-to-peer. So it's like a disconnected web instead of through like specific servers. So yeah. It's just the most free way to go through the internet at the moment. Is there anything else I want to say about that? No, I don't know. That was an aside. I don't know what to say. Okay, let's just trying to add some constructive positivism to this, because it's like I don't want to do just critiques. I want, like, I myself think about, like, if I ever have the opportunity, as this guy describes it, of having the means to behave in a resistant manner, I would like to know the tricks of the trade. So I spread that around a little bit. That's all.
Agreement that workers are basically rational, reasonable people trying to do the best they can under their circumstances. Well, what changed in that was starting probably around the 80s or so, it really took hold that it's not that a rational, reasonable response to their constraints that's keeping them where they are, but it's that they've internalized a lot of ideology, the culture, the socialization, what they're told by the media, by the church, by politicians.
Okay, and like, I find this guy very persuasive, but whenever he starts with that, I can't help but think like about how much I hear repeated around me this culture of be an individual, be a rock star, be nonconformist to such a degree that you fit in with everyone else because everyone's trying to be unique. And essentially, it's just like, don't use social networks, don't talk to people, don't be. I don't even want to use the word authentic because it's too cheesy, but you know what I mean. It's like, and I can't help, but maybe I'm a dupe, but I can't help but feel like that is a huge obstacle to people developing the self-identity, where belonging to a union, for use a concrete example, or any club or organization, is meaningful to people. It makes me wonder, is it like, is the hyper individualist rock star, like, you got to be that kind of mentality, actually so hazardous that it stops political movements? And here's the quibble, the point that I have to put forward to this guy as a challenge. How does, like, to me, it's like media has become so much more prolific, strong, just more powerful. TV is everywhere. It's totally different from before the 50s. They had radio, which was, and posters, which they used to do propaganda for the war effort, and it was extremely effective. But we live in a time now where media, to me, seems, and Noam Chomsky's quite a big proponent of this, where media seems to be very subtle, persuasive. It's good at smuggling ideas into you without even having to be directly propagandistic. And to me, the argument that makes it more of a problem than ever before, and you do need some sort of immunity to it, like some sort of self-defense, intellectual self-defense to protect yourself from that bullshit. It seems to me to be somewhat necessary. Now, that being said, I did find this video very compelling, so I'm gonna finish watching it. I haven't watched too much past this part, so I think it might start becoming newer to me. But
and so they believe what they're told. Now, this had a disastrous effect, in my opinion, in the culture of the left and how we understand capitalism. Because whereas earlier, if you took it for granted that people basically understand their situation, they basically understand that they're being screwed over, they basically understand that they need to do something about it. But the reason they're not doing something about it is because their bosses will fire them, or because
this is the part that got me, because I when I look at my own life, I feel bad because I'm like, well, I'm a bit of a coward. It's true. Like I don't like for me, I'm a prole. That's my background. My father was an itinerant carpenter. That was what he did. And then he moved on to some sales shit kind of later for the oil and gas. It's kind of like a slightly better job, but it's essentially the same class that going out happening there. The thing about that is that for me, and I think a lot of people who are like me, who maybe managed to get their foot up a little bit and like the doors open up a bit and things don't look so bleak and monotonous forever and grim, is that I'm very satisfied if I got like a $60,000 a year salary job, which is peanuts for anyone in upper middle class or middle class. That's nothing. To me, I'd be very satisfied with that. Except for that I really don't like the system. That would be the only thing that would compel me to move on to do more activism. I just don't like it. I have my reasons, but I'm not going to go into that right here. And so what he says, their bosses will fire them or whatever, it's like that lines up with me because like I am quite afraid of getting blackballed because I just want an okay life. And I have made this point with my brother. It's like not necessarily this has to happen, but it seems to be that large crises need to happen before people do an out and out revolution. Not that we necessarily need an all and out revolution to get what people want, which is a restructuring of the system. Like, yes, in these states, people need more healthcare. They need access to healthcare. It's not based around employment. I could go on about the little things that could be reformed to make the U.S. a lot less of a totalitarian Orwellian type state, basically. That being said, I don't think any of that would be enough. I think it just needs to be completely restructured. It needs to be something much more in line with the idea that the workers have a say, a democratic say in the means of production. That to me is like a necessary thing. A large part of the problem is that companies make whatever they want, and a lot of what companies manufacture is poison or junk or whatever. I just call it all poison because some of it's just straight up harmful. I don't think ads are good for you. Everybody agrees that mass producing weapons that they dump into other countries is bad, right? Like people aren't. And this is where I do agree with this guy. I don't think people are dupes. I think everybody pretty much agrees on that. So yeah, I'm kind of ranting, but here we go. Where it's just like this video made me think quite a lot. It's like I'm like kind of, it's like a paradox. I'm like on both sides of the fence. So, but I definitely want to see if we can. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get through it because I'm about Pasanabi syndrome here, but there we go.
It's just too hard to organize because they don't have the time to organize, things like that. Then you work on those things with them and you try to understand the specifics of each situation so that you can make it less intimidating for them. But once you believe that they actually don't really understand their circumstances, that they don't really know what to do, that they don't really understand that they're being exploited or treated badly, you start thinking that they're fools, that they're.
I like what he's saying, but I can't help but think that a big part of the problem is still that people don't understand how global the markets have become, and that some people think that, like, and there's no harm in working locally because you have to start somewhere. That's all I would do at the beginning. You have no choice. Like, but if you want any real action to take place, you have to. I feel like the only way up and out is to connect with other laborers groups globally, and I think even Marx kind of agrees with that. Honestly, like the global revolution is pretty much necessary, especially nowadays because the labor is controlled through litigation and national policy, so that you can have groups of laborers in other countries that have specific rules, and they're not allowed to move around. Um, and because of that, people have basically like kind of like a quasi feudalism where you can control where the peasants work, so they can't negotiate their wages. Like we can't really interact very much with like workers in like say India or China or anything like that. And this to me seems to be a large part of the problem. Is that a cultural education thing, or people dupes and so they don't figure that out? I kind of actually agree with this guy. I think people actually sort of know that on some level, so maybe I do have the wrong idea. I don't know. It's interesting.
Dupes, that they're easily manipulated. And it drives a wedge between the left and the people who is trying to organize, because now suddenly, instead of organizers thinking, we have to figure out what their conditions are and how to make it better for them to
This is a good point. So
organize, you start thinking, oh, these guys, they don't really understand what's going on, and it's up to us to enlighten them. And it generates kind of elitism, and that elitism is now rampant on the left towards working people. So the motivation with the book was to try to show what the problems are in this approach and the disastrous effects that it's had.
Okay, and so that idea that that the workers did not understand how they were being exploited, and was submerged. That understanding was.
I think things have changed a little bit since then, because now the exploitation isn't so much really long hours, very poor amount of money paid, although that's still a part of the process. Now it seems to be more precarity, like contract work. No job security seems to be, which, I mean, to be fair, it's like kind of always been a little bit like that, but there has been more of that happening lately. Which is a bit different. And I suppose if people didn't understand that and they still thought they're living in a blue collar job universe, then it could easily stunt any sort of like you know, activity, political activity, maybe. I don't know.
Submerged or maybe repressed. Submerged, I think, is probably the best word, by all the ideological players that are surrounding them in society, is that concept of false consciousness, right? Is that
Yeah. So he's saying that there are Marxists who believe that false consciousness is the reason that the revolutionary activity reform did not really happen past the 50s. That's like the New Deal era. Obviously, to me, it's obvious that the reason it didn't happen is because there was a capitalist-backed World War II, which pretty much was explicitly there to trick people. And like, here's my disagreement: is that people were duped. People were duped into believing that the French and the Germans and the English were different from each other. When they dress the same, they read pretty much the same shit, translated or whatever. They act the same. Their cultures are super similar. They all have the same guns, even. It's barely different. To get a whole population of people to believe that somebody who looks almost, and I've watched, you can go on YouTube and you can find actual video footage that's been recolorized from the interwar period, and you can look at England in 1930 whatever, you can look at Germany in 1930 whatever, and they look fucking identical. All right, that's the reality. I encourage anyone to go watch colorized footage of that era, because you'll see they're almost freaking identical. It's the same culture, and to me, that is being duped. If your government can trick you into thinking that those other guys are exactly like you, are somehow monsters or something, and it's worth fighting a war with them and killing yourself over it, and for the elites, it's mostly an excuse to keep the populations from getting too strong, in my opinion. Hopefully they plan to, of course, gain some booty from the war, but that never fucking happened because everyone destroyed the shit out of anything there. And the only one who won was, of course, the USA, because they didn't get attacked at home very much. The exception being Pearl Harbor, of course. I mean, I don't know what to call that but being duped. Now, that being said, the reason that the revolutionary activity did not continue after World War II, in my opinion, is simply because people were probably shocked, literally shell shocked after World War II, and just they were settling for less. They were like, I just want peace and quiet. The great generations, it's called. They want peace and quiet, a chill, some amount of reward and respect after going through this horrible event, and to focus on staying at home, white picket fence, whatever. You get the idea. You get the picture. Obviously, that combined with FDR's policies of providing, I don't know if he did the GI Bill, but it was around that period. These little benefits combined with the fact that people were probably just, their souls were torn apart from World War II. That, to me, is why there was no revolutionary activity. Now, the only reason it got to that point is because, yeah, the elites did trick people into doing World War II, which is essentially bullshit. So I don't know. That's why this is why I keep saying I have paradoxical feelings about this argument, because it seems to me like we're saying potato. I don't know. Anyways, let's go on.
Yes.
Okay. And so, so let's, and this turn, the cultural turn, came about in the early 80s, I guess, is what, because there wasn't necessarily a response to the question of why capitalism hasn't fallen up to that point, because it appeared like it was going to. Right?
Right up until the 40s.
Yeah. Will you just outline that for us? Like, give us a sense of it was very.
This is very much true. Like, the Social Democratic Party in Germany was quite strong at the time. So much so that the elites were actually just straight up afraid of them. That's why, I forget who the leader of the German party was at the time. Von Hindenburg, maybe? Am I misremembering his name? I don't know. He puts Hitler in as, I think it's Chancellor? Something like that. He appoints him. Even though Hitler's party, I believe, had 18% of the vote, something around there. So he wasn't actually that popular. And he was third or fourth when it came to being personally elected for the position. That Hindenburg had. That's what I mean. Which basically, he wasn't as popular as people make him out to be at the time. Hindenburg just put him in there because he thought, well, these guys are not leftists. They're not Marxists. So there's a good chance that if I put them into my position here, that I'll have a useful ally to boost my career. It was a careerist move. It was an elitist careerist move. It was a dumbass move because obviously it was wrong. Hitler had no intention of helping Hindenburg past sucking up to him for a little bit. And then after that, the party basically used violence to increase the vote that they had. Just straight up violence and manipulation. And I could go into the history of that, but you can look it up yourself if you want. Maybe I'll talk about it later. I don't know.
Widely believed that we were on track through the first half of the 20th century, that it's sort of a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, let's step back for a second. You go back to the 19th century, Marx, Engels, creates its own gravediggers, was the term they used. Capitalism creates a working class. It exploits that working class. But that class is positioned to overthrow the system because it needs to, because it's being treated so badly, and because the whole system runs on its labor. So if that class holds back its labor or even rises up, the system's gone. And it's just a matter of time before that happens. And the socialist movement is built on that conviction. In the 1890s, the early 1900s, that's when you see the socialist movement coming together. And starting, I would say, in 1905 or so, all the way up until the 1940s, what do we see all across Europe and in much of the...
I would say that it would also not hurt to focus on making demands about what is made as opposed to just how it's made and who's making it, like labor side politics, and that's the whole point of the eco movement, right? Anybody who has doubts about the eco movement, I'm not going to address that right here, but I will say that just look up images and photos of the trash in the ocean, and obviously that's caused by human beings, and obviously it's a problem that's only getting worse, and that would be solved by effectively making demands on capitalist producers to produce what people want in a democratically selected way. Like, if there was a way for people to get democratically involved in the goods that is produced, we would definitely I would assume we would see a change in the amount of pollution that's in the ocean. To me, it's a lack of democracy in the production process, and what is decided as the products that should be produced. You know what I mean?
Developing world, there's revolutions. Regimes are overthrown. If they're not overthrown, they're on the cusp of being overthrown. So it really does look like the system is imploding, like it's driving itself into the ground out of its own sort of internal engines. That's what changes after 45. Now, once in the post-war world, it's becoming clear that the system isn't going to collapse. This question becomes important, which is, why doesn't it collapse? It was looking like it would. During that early 20th century, when all these revolutions were occurring, nobody's asking the question, hey, how come capitalism doesn't implode? Because it was imploding. All the questions were, how can we push it further along? How can we accelerate this whole process of capitalism's collapse? It's when, in the 1950s onward, it stabilizes itself that the question arises, why does it remain stable when it's true, as Marx said, or the socialists and anarchists said, workers are exploited, they are treated badly, they do have an interest in organizing, why don't they? That's when they start thinking, maybe it's culture. Maybe it's the ideology.
But the stabilizing force, would you attribute that to the labor movement, or I mean, what do you think stabilized it and gave this false sense of security?
Well, I mean, I don't. My point is that I don't think it's culture. I think that during this whole revolutionary,
I would argue it's just PTSD. Obviously, that's simplifying it, but I would say that would be the main component. But whatever.
Era, what was overlooked was that it's in exceptional circumstances that workers are able to get organized. And we've lived through that in your lifetime and mine. What we've seen is organizing unions is actually really hard. And in much of the developing world, it's always.
I completely agree with that. It's just tough. Yeah.
Been the case. There's no the biggest proportion of unionized workers were always in the West, not in the global South, even after capitalism came there. And in the last 50 years, the proportion of workers in unions has been declining everywhere. So what we see is that the whole episode of an organized working class and a mobilized working class is actually quite exceptional in the history of capitalism. So the question then becomes, what's the norm? What's the baseline situation in capitalism? The baseline is the reason they don't organize, the reason they don't all come together is not because they're duped or not because of ideology. It's because when you get a job, your fundamental concern is holding on to that job because the employer's got the power to hire and fire you. And when you try to organize,
this is very persuasive to me, because the main reason I would never reveal my name on the internet at this moment is because I'm quite really afraid. I mean, it's easy for me to pretend like I'm not on stream, but I'm quite very afraid of just getting blackballed from jobs. That's pretty much what it boils down to. If I had a really good source of income from like streaming, that could change, but the vast majority of people will never benefit from that sort of support. Basically, it's not gonna happen. So vast majority of people, I can only assume, are much like myself, which like they're going to participate and organize less, basically. I mean, it's just, that's how it's going to be.
You've got to do it in circumstances that it's more likely that you'll lose your job than you'll bring other people together with you. And when you...
I've already been fired once from an office job simply because, and I wasn't even being overly political, but simply because I wasn't totalitarian enough in my mindset. And at that job, they actually made us do a competitive quiz to win a prize that involved memorizing facts that we've been taught. And it's a bit of a brag, I'm sorry, but for the purpose of the story, I won that hands down. Like, I was like, I had 3 or 4 more questions than the next guy, runner up. And they still fired me because it's essentially they want you to be someone they can rely on to sit at that desk all day, every day without basically doing anything else, no activity whatsoever. They don't even want you to like talk in a meaningful way to your fellow employees. Like it's completely thought crime totalitarian state that we live in, basically. I don't really care because I was planning on leaving that job anyways. It had no future. It was literally like, you need a math degree, but we're basically going to have you fill dots in on a graph by hand, like something you could do in grade 12. So it was ass, but you know, I just got out of school, so it's like, I need to save up some money. So I have options, and that still didn't happen. So anyways, that's my little story. Yeah, but my point is, you can absolutely lose your job if you don't play ball and display right-wing totalitarian mindset thinking, for sure. The guy that they kept there was like some misogynistic, hyper alt-right asshole who was wildly incompetent on top of it.
Try to bring them together with you. Each and every person now has to come together on a platform in which people have different needs and different obligations to each other. You got to agree on what you're going to fight for. You're going to agree whether it's paid vacations that you prioritize, or whether it's medical care, whether it's the wage level, or whether it's the pace of work. The bringing people together around these interests, escaping the eye of the boss, figuring out what a good strategy is. These are all material, structural constraints that workers have, even if they know that they're being treated.
Anybody who's following the Starbucks unionization effort, which to me has like been the only thing that's happened recently that gives you even a ray of hope, you quickly see that those are major problems and can be roadblocks for sure. Anyways,
like they're being exploited and treated badly. So
maybe to put it in a nice simplified way, we need to be playing more chess when it comes to politics as opposed to Go, where you need to just get material tactical advantage with like a long-term goal still, but you know, at the end of the day, you have to like literally wedge out, you know, some sort of progress.
Argument for what stabilizes the system is the mundane everyday facts about the power dynamics, the power imbalance between employer and employee, worker and boss, and the mundane facts about all the resources and all the costs that they have to take on to organize themselves. It doesn't take ideology to get them to move away from that. It's just
His way of framing the topic here does not preclude having professional agitators, which I find interesting, but we'll see how he addresses that. I don't know, or touches on it.
Bare structural facts about where they are.
And you label that dynamic, at least in terms of the way that the worker approaches that, as resignation. And I want to come back to that. But there's still one question in that moment where the question is, when things stabilize, or there's awareness of a stabilization in the 1950s, and it's and then the question is like, you know, why is it stabilized is answered at that moment by the cultural turn. But why was the question? Why was the question? Why is it stabilized, as opposed to what were the factors that changed the situation? In other words, if, you know, prior to World War II, there's this sense that like this is impending. It's a question of time. We can try, you know, things to accelerate it or not. But this is happening. And if you looked around,
is it just decadence? Is it like the elites have nothing to talk about because they know that people are satisfied for a bit, for 20 years or whatever it was? And so they just go on. Because I know like Val Gerard is kind of a left-ish sort of thinker that comes out of this period, who talks about basically consumer culture and stuff like that. And I find him a very interesting read. I don't find him useful for getting leftist movements off the ground, but I just find him interesting in of itself. He's probably more of a cultural guy. I think he just writes about it as a hobby, as an academic hobby. Maybe the mistake is like, yes, you can read those sorts of things to get your brain dislodged from the hegemonic way of thinking, but it's not necessary to read them at all, of course. I don't think it is, to do any leftist activity. Because yeah, I kind of agree the fundamental problems are quite obvious. It's like you're afraid of being fired, you're worked way too much, you're not paid enough, and nowadays there's extra things. I think cultural analysis or ideology or whatever is important because capitalism mutates, and because it mutates, there's new threats that maybe if you don't see them, they blindside you. Like a new things like information is heavily filtered nowadays. Like there's freedom of information, but like you'll get 20, 30 web pages with just one story that's snappy and fits like the public mindset and gets clicks, but isn't even like necessarily even true. Never mind like, you know, balanced or whatever. It's like a good example of that is everyone fucking rips on Iran because it's like, oh, they're a theocracy, they're an oppressive government. I'm like, look, even if they have a point, and they might, I don't really fucking know. But even if they have a point, it's like you're ripping on Iran, but you're not ripping on Saudi Arabia, which is literally ruled by monarchs. It's like, fuck off. It's like, it's literally like, oh, they're not playing ball with the US, so we should put the lens on them. And even leftists fucking do this. I'm like, you know what? I don't give a fuck about Iran, okay? I don't give a fuck about Iran. I don't give a fuck about Cuba. I don't give a fuck about China. And I don't give a fuck about North Korea either. And a lot of leftists might be pissed by that. And I'm like, I don't care. Those countries are single. There's plenty of bad countries, and a lot of them are under capitalist regimes. And you pick out like Cuba is especially innocent. Like they haven't done anything at all egregious for many years. Like to pretend like Cuba's a threat. Like Castro was so magnanimous when it came to dealing with the U.S., which by the way, the U.S. invaded them with no pretext before the Cuban Missile Crisis with the Bay of Pigs incident. Castro had every reason to be bitter, and he wasn't. So fuck that argument. But even like Iran and even North Korea to a certain extent, like these countries are surrounded by U.S. military power and people who just want their difference of operating in the world to disappear. And like maybe there is just cause for that, but any just cause war that's so hyper focused on just people you don't agree with is suspicious. It should be treated with a heavy skepticism. There's plenty of bad countries out in the world. There's fucking like South Africa is not run well. Nobody picks on South Africa. Huge wealth inequality, and it's basically a puppet state for Western powers. That sucks. Oh, look, my internet's dropping. We're dropping frames. They're getting to me, boys. The RCMP's coming down here in their digital horses. Okay, but enough of that rant. Let's go on. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through this video. I'm not even sure how long it is. I guess they switched to another speaker. Perhaps. Yeah, there's two speakers, so it's not as long as it looks.
You had every reason to believe that.
Yeah.
Where was the question of like what changed? What over the course of these 10 years or whatever it was? I mean, because obviously there was a world war, but what about the response to the war that inhibited all of these things?
I mean, there was concessions with the New Deal politics because they needed the labor, and in Europe especially, labor was scarce because everyone was dead. So they had more bargaining power. So they didn't need to revolutionize. They could simply walk up to their masters and be like, could you please give us more things that we want? Like, you know, healthcare, benefits, social security, whatever. And they're basically like, I guess we have to. But that's not a good thing. We can do that without having bullshit capitalist-backed wars. Which are, of course, the capitalists' own sons and daughters don't generally go to these wars. And they do much less frequently, obviously. In the U.S., during the Civil War at least, you could literally pay to avoid the draft. So that's pretty fucked up. I could go on and on about that, especially with the Vietnam War, but I'm not going to do that right now.
Or was it like, you know, like, you know, was it Taft-Hartley, or was it, or what, you know, like, was there some, you know, Bruce Lee kidney punch that like?
By the way, I don't know if these political streams anyone will ever watch them or whatever, but if you do, great. Try to support the channel, because if this does become to be a thing that people are interested in, I do have my brother that I want to bring on as a guest eventually, and I want to do more like stuff like that. Just more guests in general would be the next obvious step. So if you want to see that, please support the channel. I don't do a lot of plugs, but I'm excited to do that, so I'd like an excuse to do it. So, you know, obviously having people follow, even subscribe would be amazing. Or anything would just make that maybe happen faster, obviously, which would be cool. I would like to see it. I really like to see guest interaction on shows, so I want to do that eventually. Hopefully, we can make that happen.
3 weeks later is when you die. Like, what happened during that time, and why is that not examined as a way of bringing out what a response to the stabilization that was being seen, in the 50s addressed?
In the 50s and 60s, I don't think this cultural answer to the question was ruled a roost the way it did by the 80s and 90s. If we trace back this whole turn to culture in the 80s, we can trace it back to the 50s as when this line of thinking begins and starts gathering steam. But actually, in the 50s and 60s, when there was still a trade union movement, there were still communist parties and socialist parties, they were asking the questions, Sam, the way you've just posed them, which is not that, oh, there's some deep, dark secret in capitalism that we missed before. They were thinking in terms of there's something has changed between the 30s and the 50s that's made things a lot harder for us. And they did look at things like,
I like what you're saying. He actually is persuading me quite a bit, but I mean, it's no surprise to me that those theories come out in the 70s and 80s. I think, like, Baudrillard's someone I keep harping on. Foucault's probably kind of would maybe fall into that. But it's no surprise to me because, wait, when did Foucault write? I don't even know. I could be getting that wrong. Anyways, but I kind of generally know what he means there. But I mean, to me, it seems kind of like, well, like with the advent of TV becoming like popular, like it's very much mass produced and it's kind of before the internet, so it's like, but I think TV itself is sufficient to warrant people getting worried about that having extra strong effects on people's psychology. Can you blame them for being worried? Maybe they exaggerated the threat quite a lot. That's could be argued, but I don't think it's because they're I hesitate to say that it's just like they're elitists and that was their primary motivation. I think they were actually people who were legitimately afraid of mass media. I don't fucking like mass media. We'll have to watch maybe again the My Dinner with Andre clip, but I'm falling into the camp where it's like pretty much everything you consume essentially nowadays turns you into a robot. That's the point of it. Which that might be an exaggeration and overkill, but I think it's better safe than sorry kind of thing, right? I can just tell you I'm tired of getting booze commercials on my YouTube channel, so subscribe and I will go with YouTube Premium and I don't have to see those booze commercials anymore. Hooray!
The post-war boom,
that's my stupid
the
plug.
Enormous rise in working class standards of living, the fact that unions have become compromised and they've kind of bought into the system and they're more in the job of managing workers rather than mobilizing workers. The strain of thought was very much there. And you can think of the 50s and 60s as a time when there's these two streams of thought within the left. One is this kind of cultural thinking, and the other is more strategic, more looking at the facts on the ground and what's changed on the ground. What happens is, by the 70s, the social groups, social organizations that are thinking in a strategic way, the way you're saying, they're getting their asses kicked. Mm-hmm. They are in retreat. Yeah. The left is collapsing. The trade unionists are in the left wing of the trade union movement is in retreat everywhere. And the thinking about capitalism is taken over by professional academics, by professional intellectuals. And in that class of people,
I generally agree with what he said. The thing is, I've read a lot of those professional academics. There's probably ones I've read that I don't remember off the top of my head because I'm not an expert in that field. But none of them claim to be messiahs or anything like that for leftist movements. They're literally writing mostly as academics. They claim that. So I think it's just the fact that these trade unions get destroyed and then people move towards people like Baudrillard or Foucault or whatever because they have nothing to grab onto. A lot of these movements, some of the momentum comes from universities and these students just don't. I mean, if you destroy other activists, then who do you cling to? And it's not the academics' fault. It's just literally everything else is destroyed. Right? when I say destroyed, I mean like um it's dark, but literally every civil rights activist who was black in during the 60s was killed either by like some KKK type member, some stochastic terrorist event just came by and shot them essentially, or they were directly murdered by the police. I forget the guy's name, but he's a famous case where the police went in and shot like hundreds of rounds and killed them while they're in their bed. Like, I forget the name of that guy. I think it started with an H. Martin Luther King was killed by psycho terrorist dudes, which the police, I'm sure, didn't really track down effectively. Malcolm X. There's everyone is killed. Everybody, every single person is killed who's black, and if you're white, there's a good chance you're shot as well. Like what he doesn't understand, and maybe that's blunt and rude of me to put it, but I don't think he's pointing out that effectively there was just a lot of violence that went on in the late 60s, right? Which, yeah, and then he's like saying, oh, it was a cultural explanation. It's because there's nothing else left. Like, people would have rallied around people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King more had they not been killed. Or, you know, sometimes the leaders were just thrown in prison forever, too, for, like, minor charges or whatever. And they used racism and stuff to justify that or whatever. You know, I'm not hugely familiar with that period, like, perfectly, but you get the idea. And to say that the cause is a weakness, that people believe too much in this cultural thing and got too academic, is, I think, very naive. It's like a good point that people should not fall into that trap, because Bal Gerard is interesting enrichment to read. I'm glad I read him, but I don't use him at all for a guidebook to do leftist movements or anything like that. It's just my own personal enrichment, amusement. I consider him a hobby writer. This is vaguely connected to the left. He's a funny, exciting read too in a lot of ways, so it's fine. Yeah, it's like, to me, it's violence, which, I mean, doesn't really, you know, it's compatible with his theory because he's saying it's tactical, mundane things. Well, violence is as mundane as it gets. It's just beat someone over the head until they do what you say, essentially.
It really doesn't pay to be talking about strategic dilemmas in organizing against capitalism and what's changed for organizers, because they don't do any of the organizing, and their professional interests aren't bound up with the success of labor organizing.
Yeah, see, I just completely disagree with this framing. For the reasons I just stated. It's like, I think it was mostly just violence. All the civil activist people were shot, thrown in prison. That's just what happened, in my opinion. Maybe there's examples of exceptions to that where it played out differently, but the way I frame it is really different from what he's framing it. So it's just like, I just have to push back a little bit on that here. I don't know.
First of all, they're very distant from everyday concerns and lives of workers. So it's easy for them to think the problem isn't people's consciousness. The problem is in people's orientation to the world. And also,
again, these writers like Bal Gerard and so on, there's probably others that I'm misremembering or whatever, because I'm not a huge expert on them. They're not posing themselves as leaders of leftist movements. Some people in universities put them on a pedestal like that, but they themselves do not claim to be any of this. And the only reason that they get put on that pedestal is because other people are, I think it's just violence. I think it's literally, like, the late 60s was extremely violent. And they're drafting people, of course, too, right? So that makes people disappear off the streets who would otherwise be politically active.
It just is a lot easier to get along as an academic if you're saying that the world out there is all a matter of perception. It's all a matter of how you see it, rather than a fight between contending interests and contending.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, here's the thing. I think the problem is, if you take what he's saying, extend it a little bit further, it leads to Bal Gerard's work is essentially useless, and it would be almost as good as if you got rid of it. I don't think that's true. I think, yeah, you can read it as a hobby book. Is it useful for leftist activity? A guidebook? No. But it's still a useful work. It's probably put on too high of a pedestal. Like, those academics never expected to be broadly famous or turned into rock stars, and they were. I don't know what else to say about it. It's like, Like, even from their own mouth. I mean, do you think that these professors who work in universities for decades expected to become rock stars when they wrote those books? They didn't, okay? That's a foolish picture of the situation. There's no way they could have predicted that would happen. There's no way they wrote those books with that in mind. They did not, okay? So if I'm not saying he is, but I say if anyone were to frame it like that, that would be foolish. I don't know what to say.
Forces, which is the way the left thought of it. So on the one hand, you get a labor movement and a socialist movement that's being defeated and driven back. And so strategic thinking is declining on the left. And within the intelligentsia, you get this embrace of a very idealistic, moralized, cultural way of looking at the world because it's the way they see the world. And it does have fewer professional costs. And so that's why by the 80s, this becomes a dominant trend. And it's no surprise that
he's somehow positioning it as if these academics were trying to become famous through their works, like popularly. They were not. They wrote randomly. They're just philosophers. They don't care.
Now, today, for the first time in 40, 45 years.
I mean, I'm sure they're happy to be famous, but it definitely wasn't in their sights.
In my opinion, you're seeing strategic thinking reemerge on the left. Why? It's because there is actual organizing going on. There's actual fights around policy issues that for the first time is around real issues and not just culture wars that the media promotes. It came from outside the academy. It didn't come from inside. It came from...
Yeah, I agree with this. Obviously, the academy, I agree with what he's saying generally. Like, honestly, I'm persuaded by like 80% of what he's saying. But his framing of it, I think the key of the violence that was used in the police state and the prison state that came about is, I think he's just, his theory lacks that, and it's just such obviously a huge lever.
Outside universities. Otherwise, you would have seen this stuff going on forever and ever.
I mean, and I think to some extent, I mean, it feels to me that some of it was, there was also sort of like elements of the academy, if you will, that were sort of like shoved to like into some sort of like third place between workers and what the academy had enjoyed, you know, over the past 40, 50 years, right? Like you had a lot of like, I mean, I'm thinking about the strikes that started in Wisconsin were started by, you know, TAs and, you know, people who were being exploited in the academy in a way that maybe there wasn't that type of exploitation before. And there were...
Yeah, so some movements do arise out of universities and stuff like that. And of course, that type of person might be more prone to putting an academic person on a pedestal because they just feel drawn to it more. But the only reason they became as popular as they did was because of the lack of organizers around them. And again, it's violence. It's not because people were weak or they were silly or whatever. It's like literally they were killed off by random psychoterrorists. It's like, how do you prevent that? You got to go out and do rallies. You're vulnerable. There's no way you can have enough security to guarantee your safety 100% at all times. It's just inevitable. The problem is the police are all fascist right-wing bootlickers back then, and they're probably doubly so nowadays. They're just way more coy about it, and they don't go after these groups that will assassinate civil rights activists or whatever. And nowadays it's different leaders. The key to the Black Lives Matter movement, even being successful as it is it doesn't have any obvious leaders. It's more or less kind of spontaneous. It's probably not entirely true, but there's definitely less vulnerability of like having a large target that you can hit, which was a weakness of the late 60s movements. It's a terrible thing to say, and like I think leaders are super important, but it also creates, you know, it's grim to talk about it, but that's just where we are right now. I think
there were sympathies that were sort of developed, I guess.
I mean, January 6th incident, they kind of let it happen up until it actually took place. They didn't give a shit because the cops are mostly right wing, and Trump literally wouldn't even let them go in, so he doesn't facilitate any action either. Not that the Democrats are any better. I'm not saying that. They're all fucking right wingers. But those same people don't really go after wacko shooters who will kill political protesters and organizers. And plus, there's all of the accounts of policemen literally smashing glass on their own to give them an excuse to beat the shit out of rioters. So they'll stage like fake property damage, as if property damage were a really good excuse, but it's not. These things, there's lots of accounts of that happening.
People perceive
that has given more of a base for a more kind of materialist thinking about politics now. It's limited. You know, the teacher strikes and all that. School teachers, secondary school teachers, elementary school teachers, they face very different conditions than university people, even TAs and RAs. And, you know, the more of a turn to the left came out of the school.
TAs have pretty precarious work from my understanding, but okay. It's a little different.
Teacher strikes than from the TAs and what's happening in universities.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. I mean, if I remember correctly, the stuff that was happening in Wisconsin in 2011 in response to Walker was a function of that, and it was because they were. I think it was like it was over largely over healthcare, I think too. But regardless,
I don't know this event, but that's really interesting. I'm not as into the nitty-gritty little US events that happen, but I might start learning more about that for sure. The problem is in Canada is we're so much more oppressed. It's like stuff like that is like fairly rare. Starbucks thing happened recently, and I'm sure my brother's more familiar with it, but yeah. I would love to have the opportunity to participate in organizations that are happening more locally at some point, but we'll see.
So once that turn is made, it sort of obscures this notion of resignation as a response as to why workers are not organizing, and that resignation is just like I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't type of situation, and so I might as well just go with the path of least resistance.
Yeah. So if you were in a university in 1990 or 1995, what you would be told is that the way capitalism works is it's a system in which there's.
Wait, what time period did he say?
Told is that the
90s. Okay.
The way capitalism works is it's a system in which there's a lot of domination, a lot of people are being bossed around, but dominant classes, elites have hegemony, cultural hegemony. That's the buzzword that was used.
I pretty much agree with this, and that I've taken these same courses in university, and I wasn't a huge fan of them, and they do throw around the word cultural hegemony a lot. Not that I have any like serious problem with it. I'm just like, how effective is it really to know about these things? It's like I get his specific annoyance and grievance. Obviously, culture war stuff has been pretty much useless. People used to think that it was like a small stepping stone, but I don't think it really is. Because the problem is, let's use racism as a very specific example because it's very measurable. You can change people's attitudes about racism. You can have more variety and diversity on TV shows, and why not? I guess that's fine. Culture has changed in that way, but well, the stats are is that people are more segregated now than pre-civil rights, and that's because not of direct racism from public officials or racism when it comes to your neighbors kicking you out of the town like they used to do in the 50s and 60s. Like if a black person come in, they could get hazed or whatever you call it, bricks thrown through their window. It's racism of just policy. It's like economic policies and shit, redlining. Adam Conover's people do a documentary on that kind of thing. So what good does cultural hegemony and talking about that matter? It gives people a fucking lollipop for being like good little boys and girls, for acting more diverse, but instead of actually changing anything. I mean, God forbid anyone talks about reparations these days, because it's all cultural talk. And yeah, it is propagated by the media as essentially a distraction. Here's the thing, like trans issues are the big issue that's on the plate right now, and it's used in the same way that homophobia was used earlier. I would say like 70s to 90s ish, whatever, somewhere in there, to basically signal to other conservatives that you're on the same team and give yourself justification for still ruling the roost because you're providing like some sort of moral order when obviously it's just like the average person agrees that we should not fuck with trans people's lives. We should facilitate, people living how they want to live. Most of the transphobia is just sexual hangups that Americans just fucking have because we think we're so fucking liberated, but we're actually really sexually repressed. We are. That's how it is. It's bullshit. Just because you see a lot of scantily clad people on advertisements does not mean you're a sexually free country or anything like that, or that you like. I feel like I have to address this issue with more detail. Actually, the American mindset is essentially that human beings are like reindeer, and reindeer, like, there's like competition, and you're supposed to, your sex drive is dictated around your social hierarchical group and blah 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 blah. It's like they think they compare us to like certain animals constantly, like that guy is a stag or a buck or whatever. Like that's a thing American culture does. I hope we can all agree on that, right? And then instead of saying, well, okay, what about bonobos? It's dumb to compare humans to animals at any rate, but bonobos fucking exist, and they are very closely related to us genetically, and they use sex as just simply a bonding thing, and they have matriarchies, and it's like, okay, so your argument is dumb anyways, but even within the argument of animals, it's like you could just pick other animals. And everybody knows that the more socially complex animals are, sexual drives take on mostly a social role. And that's how it is. So it's like, people are gay because they, like, maybe it's for whatever reason, but it's certainly not simply because they're going against the biological order or something like that. Right? Like, it's stupid to think that way, honestly. And that's essentially the American mindset set in a nutshell, I would say. We're very, like, pretty much puritanical when it comes right down to it, and it's hidden behind this glossy magazine exterior. I don't know, that's how I see it. Whatever.
And cultural hegemony basically means that because of their ideological indoctrination, because of their socialization, workers give a consent. They agree to their subordinate position in capitalism. Just the way inside the church, the laity agrees to give power to the priesthood, right? They do it because they're socialized into it. So the idea was capitalism runs on consent. And the consent comes.
Yeah, I don't really agree with this. So the consent thing. So I agree with this speaker, but I don't agree with he's shooting down a theory. And like, yeah, the consent thing, it doesn't really, I don't think that's how it works. I think it's literally mostly mechanics and legal. I think there's the legal structure of stuff matters too. I consider that a mechanic or like a material thing. The laws themselves as well.
From all this ideological stuff that they're told. And because the dominant class controls media, they control all the political institutions, the universities, and all that stuff. Now, this is what I'm challenging.
Yeah, this is why I say I'm 80% persuaded by this man, because what's his name? Vivek Cheaper. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I'm very sorry. I 80% agree with this, because here's the thing. I can have a few quibbles with what he's saying. I think, that's kind of my job if I was to stream politically in a sense, but I kind of just agree with 80% of what he says, honestly. It's like,
in my book, saying that the people aren't fools, they're not idiots. The reason they agreed to stay where they are is because of the stuff that I just brought up earlier about the dilemmas about coming together.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, and he is pretty much right. Like, the social hegemony, like the stuff he's described is pretty much what they teach in sociology textbooks at university, which is, what's the word for it? It's just ineffective. I don't know. I think that's pretty much what it boils down to. It's like, I couldn't even say that it's wrong, but it's like, that's not really my beef with it. My beef is that, oh yeah, that reminds me of another point I didn't make up about the trans thing, is that most people agree to just let people do whatever they want. That's like a widely Roe v. Wade's another great example. Most people fucking hate the Roe v. Wade overturn thing that happened recently in the Supreme Court, but it happens anyways. It's like these cultural issues are like most people are on the same side of the fence when it comes to their agreement. And yes, media has made us think that there is contention where in large parts there just isn't contention. That's just not a thing. Yeah, and that's I guess I see that as evidence for this guy being right. It's like, well, the cultural hegemony thing is not correct because people see the bullshit that's happening, but they just can't do anything about it at this moment. Because people know that transphobia is scapegoating designed to drum up fear, to put it, I guess, very bluntly, to try to signal to other conservatives who also have power, hey, send me money, send me clout. I deserve it because I know which way the wind's blowing, which side of the which side of the toast is buttered. I know all this shit because, I'm doing this flag for you. And then it's how they can play ball with each other, essentially. Yeah, I think it's enough for me talking about that. I have a few other things I might want to bring up, but it's not really super apropos to this.
So what they do is they don't consent to the system; they resign themselves to it. They kind of shrug and go, well, "There's nothing I can do." As you said, there's nothing I can do. If I try to organize, I'll be fired.
I don't like to admit it, but that's pretty much my problem. It would be amazing if I get some income streaming, just even a little bit. $500 a month would be a godsend. I could still work my little part-time job, and then I'd have more than enough money to live very comfortably, and some hours free my day to professionally agitate. But most people are not gonna be in that situation, right? Yeah, and to get more people into that situation, you just have to organize so you can get shorter work weeks with the same pay, of course. I think would be a major first step, and just better pay in general as well, and less precarity, because that's the new sneaky complex way to keep people down right now, is to just push a lot of precarious jobs into the market that, quite frankly, if you think about it, like 30-40 years ago, those jobs probably would have been illegal. I know that Uber got bagged for treating its employees as like contract workers instead of actual employees, because Uber claimed that they're a facilitator and not an actual employer of the drivers, and they got overturned, I think, in the Supreme Court or something like that. And yeah, because yes, in the past, that sort of like nitpicking and legal, what's the word, like finagling or whatever, would have been illegal. It would have been unacceptable back in the day. So, but yeah, it's different times now, unfortunately. I think that's another huge goal besides the shorter working hours. Would be like the top two things I would look for.
Bring people together, we'll probably lose. And if we lose, we're fired again. So until and unless I think there's a real chance of winning, I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm going to try to make the best of the situation. And I'm going to just prioritize keeping my job. I'll do what I can. I might show up to work late. I might try to take more leave than I'm allowed to do. I might even sabotage the work process, or, do something to throw, as they say.
The Twitter software engineers, in my mind, are in the process right now of sabotaging the workplace because they're pissed that their neighbor got fired, or X, Y, and Z, or the Elon's muting them during intercom calls, or whatever jackassery he's up to. By the way, the tech engineer wizards are not people you should fuck with. They're essentially the clergy, or the closest equivalent that we have in our modern world. And Elon's fucking with them. He's about to realize that he doesn't have all the power. The engineers, the technocrats, also have a fair bit of power, and you cannot fuck with them. Now, that being said, I do not condone or agree with, and I chastise them heavily, because what they're doing is they're shutting down Twitter temporarily, which is only helping Elon Musk. And they kind of know that in the back of their minds. Like, they're putting him in a timeout, taking him off of Twitter so he does less damage, he can cool off. To save Elon's own fucking skin. Because at the end of the day, the technocrats are not really on our side. They like the fact that they get overpaid. It's hard to become a software engineer. The market's constrained. They use a lot of contract work for the lesser coders. They like the way that the world works. They're not fucking out there to help us. I'm sorry. Like, technocrats just are not there to help us either. They will fucking, if Elon Musk turns his dick and pisses on them, they will piss on him right back. But that's about as far as it goes. And really, at the end of the day, it's just there to remind him the reality that you do not control the structure of how things work. We do. And we're telling you this for his own good, essentially. I wish Twitter was still functioning fairly correctly, because then Elon could make a humongous dumbass out of him in perpetuity and become, as I keep describing, the Marie Antoinette of our generation, where he's just very hateable.
A wrench in the works while I'm at work. But taking the next step to organizing, that's too much. That means I resign myself.
How much
does artificially creating, I mean, or you could say manufacturing that consent, right? Like, is that really a way to kind of ascribe a morality to a system?
I've done an hour already. That's crazy. I think this is a good stopping point here. It's so unfair to stop his video halfway when he hasn't even finished, but I feel like he has gotten out all of his main ideas. We can, of course, come back and finish this later. I think I'm going to be switching to some video game stuff for a bit. Perhaps. Because, yeah, there's like another whole half of his interview, which I probably will listen to at some point. But yeah, at least we got the main ideas out there. Some contention. A lot of it I agree with. Thought it was very thought-provoking. Made me rethink a little bit of how I perceive the situation at hand. Take stock. So I wanted to share that, and I hope other people found that useful. So, yeah, I want to do some gaming. I wish I knew what people want to watch. We just finished Blade Runner, which was cool. I liked Blade Runner. So immersive. The steam everywhere makes me want a humidifier. Okay. Yeah, High on Life obviously is the obvious choice of game to play. I want to make some tea, and then yeah, I guess we'll play. Do I want to play High on Life? It's so goofy. Is like that the game to play right after political stuff? Kinda, right? I don't know. So many choices. I could play some Cruelty Squad. That's probably the way to go, because I don't want to do High on Life, because anybody who's watching that and they're going through the VODs one after the other will get confused if I throw it in here. So I'll just do some Cruelty Squad. Maybe we'll do a High on Life. I don't know. I'm gonna make some tea. Anyways, yeah, I hope that gave you something to chew on, maybe, or encourage you to do some activism locally as well. That would be cool. Very appreciated if you do. Okay. How about we wind down? I had this lined up too. It's more of a lighthearted but still political, interesting kind of video. And Adam ruins everything. The medical one, I think I showed some clips of it. We didn't finish it, but probably not gonna finish it right here. I don't know if there's anything in here I want to watch. Can we like pick out episodes? Gotta like manually scroll for it. And I see how it is. What's this boxing? What? There's so many. There's probably some of these I haven't even seen. Adam's doing more leftist stuff. We'll see how that goes. He's pretty rough around the edges. I said this before, but he probably could work on his improv. He was on Hasanabe's show, and it's like he's also on Joe Rogan's show, and Joe Rogan managed to derail him with the stupid, hyper narrow trans Olympic typical right winger debate that Joe Rogan uses whenever he wants to disagree with you but doesn't want to look like a jackass, so he defaults to that. As if the rules in the Olympics for trans people even matter to the rest of the population. Like Joe Rogan actually cares about the Olympics. Like, come off it, dude. He can say that as much as he wants. I just don't believe it. It doesn't jive with like the rest of what he does. And even then, for the people who do care, there's a governing body that can deal with that. It's like, go participate in that governing body if you care so much, but it's not a wide public issue. It's so stupid. It's scapegoating. It's just fucking reactionary right-wing bullshit, and they're just picking anybody they think is a good target. Now it's gone on to straight anti-Semitism. The whole fucking Kanye thing. Which is probably tough on Sam Cedar. Man, is there anything in here I want to watch? I don't know. Like, I don't have these memorized, so I can't like see which ones which. There's just some Doom pictures in here. That's funny. It must be like about video game violence, right? I feel like that one's so obvious, dead and done that it's not really important. You know. Let's watch some Hasanabe clips, maybe. I'm just a waffle in here. Is there anything in here that would be Andrew Tate? Andrew Tate's such a jackass, I don't even want to comment on him. Like, he's just a fucking screwball. But, you know, he has got a lot of clout right now, so I see why Hasanabe, like, takes him down. That's not really my thing, though. The ban appeals featuring Slam. I've seen this, but it's really funny. I don't want to watch one I've already seen, otherwise I would click on it. But if we see another ban appeal, I might go for that. Reaction videos I know are such low-hanging fruit, but I'm just starting. Please give me a break. Joe Rogan versus Bill Burr. Who's the best president? I assume this is ironic.
It's the Bricks Boxing Day blowout. From 7 till noon, get free local delivery. Plus, buy any TV and
Yeah, I
get
hate
$50
their
credit on
announcer.
furniture and mattresses. Or buy
hate
any two
ads.
appliances and get $100 credit. No
This is such low-hanging fruit to react to a react, but I'm just starting. If somehow this channel becomes more popular, I will make better content than this. But
environmental activist, and I'm thinking, like, is that bad? My opponent wants clean drinking water. I mean, what next? Vladimir Putin? Is Airbnb in my barn?
what? I don't get it.
Jesus Christ!
This is why I shouldn't watch these clips, because I don't get Hassan's humor half the time. I prefer dark humor.
I do want to hear from my favorite brilliant thinker on the subject.
How much ripping on like dumbasses in the right should the left actually do? I feel like 10 minutes for every hour is okay.
what people look for in a president. Joe Rogan is back.
Some weird thing about,
and the only reason why I'm watching this is because he's with Neil Brennan, and I love Neil Brennan. I do love him. I think he's a very funny guy. Let's take a look at what he has to
where
say.
They gravitate towards a big leader, towards someone who claims they have the answers and seems very.
This is actually an important point I was making with my brother earlier, is that during the Republican period of Rome at the tail end, there was so much competition amongst the elites that they were crushing the poor people so much that the Roman Republic was not functioning very well, and there was a lot of social upheaval. I don't know much more about it than that because it's pretty hazy. I studied it a long time ago. But the idea is that a Caesar guy would come in and temper the elites, basically squash them down a bit so that you could still get the public services in, like the bread and circuses and shit. And that's sort of the track that people are going towards now. Except we are like 1,000 years in the future, and I think it would be a huge mistake to pick an undemocratic method to tamp down the elites when we have perfectly valid other options to try. Like, China runs pretty fucking well, and they mostly managed to stay true to their communist ideology, mostly. They've had to make compromises, of course, to boost their economy so that they can say no to the USA, which they've managed to do, and some of the inner parties trying to make good on their promises, I think. Some people may not like everything they're doing, and I'm okay with that kind of criticism. I think that's totally fine. But my point with that is that why don't we just take what they're doing, figure out the weaknesses of what China's doing, and implement it here to try to get the most democracy we can in our own system? Because we don't have democracy now. Like, everybody knows that. And there's plenty of studies that show if a lobby group wants a policy passed, there's a better than 50% chance. And if a public poll shows that people want a policy passed, there's a 50% chance it has no effect on whether that policy or law comes into place, right? That's how it is. Like, you don't have democratic influence on whether bills get passed or policies get passed or whatever. It's not a thing. Yeah, and having the two-party system is crap. People often say that China, for example, is not democratic, even though they have voting. They have voting. It is tiered. It's not like direct representation. It's like you vote for your local leader and they in turn vote for higher level officials, which kind of makes it a little bureaucratized, which could be considered a weakness. I'm not a huge expert on Chinese government structure, but people confuse having one party with being undemocratic. Well, a lot of people like multi-party, like more than two, with coalitions and proportional representation. They think is like the best way to do democracy, and I'm kind of fine with that idea. But I don't like one-party systems have voting. It's like, to be honest, your local leader who you vote for is going to get you the things you want more often than someone at the national level anyways, right? Doesn't that make sense? And when it comes to having competitive for parties, it's like, does it really matter? I mean, like, do you want to have, because here's the thing, especially for weaker countries, like, you know, South America, the state is not very strong in most of the countries there. They don't have a lot of government resources. When you start having multi-party systems, one party is right-wing, and they're all supposed to represent potential people's interests. It's just choice, right? But one of the parties is right-wing, and they get a lot more money. I mean, for example, who's the leader in Venezuela right now that everybody loves to hate on? I know it starts with a B, but excuse me that I don't remember. You'll have to excuse me. Maduro, yeah. Everyone's like, oh, he's a dictator or whatever, when there's like no real proof for that, but that's a whole other can of worms. What I was going to point out is that Maduro has literally been drone struck and survived. That is the difference in resources. Like, the right-wing parties Like, maybe the left in Venezuela is fucking up a lot economically and in other issues. That's a perfectly valid criticism. But the problem is the right-wing parties have shit like military drones. And he's literally had drone strikes sent against him. That's why it doesn't fucking work. Because right-wing party members, even if they're not popular, much like Hitler's party in the interwar period in Germany, get a lot of support from greasy elites. And that support is super fucking useful if it's used in the right way. But if it's used to cause violence, if it's used to proliferate propaganda, super useful. It's destabilizing. One-party states typically have some mild thing where you have to put your hand on a book and you're like, oh, I agree to keep the revolutionary spirit when I am running an office, which is vague as fuck. No one's ever been thrown out or denied being able to run because it's like, oh, they're not revolutionary enough. You just have to make a little, like, generally speaking, I'm going to be revolutionary. In Cuba, that's how it works. And it makes sense because you don't want anyone running for office who's okay with putting the mob-run casinos back into Cuba like they were in the 40s and through much of Cuba's history. You should not have anyone running who's okay with that, right? That's like, you should have Cuba's interests in mind. It's no different from taking the oath of office when you go into the United States. And there's a fair amount of flexibility in one-party systems. Like, you're allowed to believe different things. You're allowed to be like, well, communism should be done this way. I think this is a better way. Maybe we need to make compromises at this moment. It's irrelevant. It's like somehow imagining that like the words that you speak have value unto themselves is just foolish. That's my little rant about that. I don't even know if I want to watch Joe Rogan make a fool of himself because he's such a fucking dumbass, but whatever.
Confident and can speak reasonably well.
Oh my god, you fucking elitist aristo wannabe. Go fuck yourself. I don't even think. Let's.
Almost like a cheat.
Can we skip to Hassan's part? I just want to see what Hassan says about this. Like, it's just, you go and you talk about like a bunch of other countries like this, and you have to listen to Joe Rogan say like, ooh, articulate speakers are hot. It's like, dude, it's like, fuck off. This is the level of conversation that the other side does. It's like, it's so annoying. I don't even want to give him any attention because it's just like, it's not even worth it.
Yeah, but I've seen other interviews where he talked about like,
I love Joe Rogan being like, we got to get to the bottom of this. Let's fact check this. You know what I mean? This is the one time Joe Rogan is like, let's Google this. George W. Bush's cock. Let's Google it. I'm doing
George W. Bush's cock. Is that what he said? He's Googling that. I'm going to fact check that. I believe, yeah, according to chat, that's exactly what got bleeped out there. Okay, I rest my case. And we're not going to watch the rest of this because it is bullshit, but it's a little something to think about. I hope this doesn't get me DMCA struck. That would be incredibly sad. It says it's royalty-free, copyright-safe music. I'm sure it's not amazing music, but... yeah... yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm infinitely hopeful. It is possible that the US turns into the Roman Empire and lasts forever. I feel like it's unlikely because technology accelerates at such a rapid pace. There's no way to solidify any system of oppression the way that the Romans did. Well, the US sure as hell is trying. Like, they seem to be doing the forever war thing that Rome was engaged in pretty well. Right. But the US's main means of grasping world power tightly is to just create a lot of guns, sell them to other countries, and if the countries won't buy the guns, they donate them to other countries, just basically dump them on their doorstep with a bunch of dictators and leave to help the people there, and it just destroys their future. Ukraine's future is getting absolutely destroyed. Just when they were becoming quite a post-industrial powerhouse, a font of culture and creativity. There's a lot of video games that come from Ukraine. That's getting fucked up. Zelensky literally forced all the males to stay in an effort to simply shore up his power so the Russians couldn't just touch him personally. He was using human bodies as bargaining chips. It's not benefiting any Ukrainians. That's like pretty nutty to think for the most part. Who am I to talk? I'm sure Canada will get annexed by the US tomorrow, no doubt, but if the US annexed Canada, I would just want to fucking leave. I wouldn't want to fight them. Like, fuck off. And I feel like most Ukrainians probably feel the same way. Which, like, it sucks, but you're just throwing my body into a pro-capitalist war. Like, I know how it fucking works to shut people up, essentially. That was the whole point, too, is that Ukraine was just too politically unstable. Russians claim there's too many Nazis in Ukraine. There was, but... And the US probably felt there's too many leftists in Ukraine or some shit, I don't know. Or they just wanted to make Russia pay an expensive bill when it came to doing security and the war itself, who knows. But it's a capitalist war, I mean, that's what it fucking is. Russia and the US both need to offload their guns at some point so that they can justify charging you and I more taxes to subsidize these gun companies once again. You gotta empty the stock out once in a while. The inventory. That's what it's about. There's enormous amounts of money to be made from it. Oh, what else do we want to do today? You know, I don't know. I just feel like doing clips. I was gonna play a game, but honestly, it's like, doesn't it make more sense to just do clips? Majority Report's very heavy, but it's my favorite channel. Sorry, I had to pick a favorite, but I like the Majority Report. He has a lot of guests, right? The guests are what spice it up. You never know what's happening there. And he gets some interesting ones too, right? His thoughts about the Confederate flag. I mean, I could watch shit on Kanye, but it's like, I don't know if there's really much to say about it. It's like, it's just so, like, I think it's quite clear cut and done to death in a lot of ways. Clean energy future. I haven't looked at this yet because it sounds too good to be true, but that would be pretty cool if that were true. Did World War I devastate the American left? Yes. This is exactly the kind of point I was making. I was saying the Social Democratic Party was fairly strong in Germany before World War II, but it was actually, I think, stronger before World War I, if I recall. And then the Social Democratic Party, I believe, agreed to be like, war bonds are cool as their official stance, and also agreed to make it their policy to say that there will be no striking during the war to help the war effort. And the general consensus among the leftist historians and leftist people who care, give a shit, is that the Social Democrats did that because they had comfy careers. That's the problem with the Social Democratic movement, is that they eventually become anti-revolutionary. Which seems pretty much fucking how it is. This is why I am not a social democrat. If anyone watches this as a social democrat, I don't dislike social democrats. We're on the same side, but I do have this problem where, like, the careerist type path that eventually goes to can become anti-revolutionary, and I don't know if it's the ultimate way forward. That's all. I still would love to see improvement in the country, because at the end of the day, it's like, I get what social democrats are trying to do. They're trying to bring material benefits to people right here, right now. I understand that. So it's like, I get it. In Canada, I'd probably just join in and try to reform the Social Democratic Party, like the NDP here, from the inside. To make them a little bit more radical would be the most obvious thing to try to do. I wouldn't try to do like an outside approach right at this moment, but maybe later. Just being honest, that's how it is for me. Tesla shareholder revolt, yeah, I'd imagine. This is a 1 minute clip. Maybe this is interesting.
Here's what you need to become a serious travel hacker. You need monitors, travel forum, Windows, blogs, email lists,
Brony fan. We might be turning the
I have everything that I need for that already, though.
corner with Elon. The FT report today that the major
I just need to hack some stuff, maybe.
Tesla shareholders said they, quote, had no working CEO, and it feels like Tesla shareholders are merely Elon's foolish bag holders. This was a response to Elon selling $3.6 billion worth of Tesla shares this week after promising he would not sell any back in April. Everyone knows he's a liar now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people say, I own Tesla.
He knows which way the wind is blowing. Like, Tesla has always been speculative, and he's just lost the shiny aura and veneer that he needs to keep that rolling. So he's just trying to jump ship. I don't know why he picked Twitter. Well, obviously he got forced into it because of the $44 billion deal. He tried to back out of it. So now he has no choice. But yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is a perfect picture of the idea that all capitalists are dumbass. They're all wildly incompetent. The only reason they succeed is because they've got an army of sycophants doing the work for them. They almost universally have their wealth inherited. There's some exceptions, but even then, they've still got privileged positions in society. You don't see people who were born in trailer parks whose parents were drug addicts becoming Jeff Bezos's. It's like you have to start from something. It's like that's just not how it works. The rags to riches things applies in celebrity Hollywood and shit like that, maybe athletes and stuff. And that's why it makes such a cute little story. When it comes to entrepreneurs, that's never the case. Not that I've ever seen. I've yet to see one example otherwise, and but it's certainly not common. If I did see an example, I'd make a note of it, but I just haven't seen any examples of that. Elon Musk's parents own an emerald mine in South Africa, and even if that's not true, they're definitely very rich. They have messages of Elon's father saying how rich they were. Jeff Bezos' family gave them a $100,000 loan to play around with so that he could actually do what he went on to do later, just sell books online. They all have stories like that. That's how it is. It's not like they're not self-made, but they're definitely not the bottom of society at all. Not even close.
So stock in what he's
like, I would put that in top 10% or something.
Doing seems to not be super helpful.
No, I mean that he's jumping ship, I think, from Tesla.
I'm convinced that, and I've got people responding saying people.
Let's look at Tesla's stock right now, because last time I looked, it was crazy. People are like, but it'll go back up, and I'm like, it's back to where it was at 2018. What do you mean? Like maybe, but one day that doesn't really matter. Let's do max. Okay, not quite down to 2018 level. Got 121. That puts it. What? No. It's about here, which would put it at 2020. So 2 years. It's lost 2 years, and will it still go down? I don't know. I'm not a stock speculator guy, obviously. And it's all speculation anyways, because we know Tesla is valued at a technology company. It's a car manufacturing company. It produces like a tiny drop in the bucket compared to all the cars, even the cars produced in North America. And yet it's valued infinitely higher, which is stupid. It's like a cryptocurrency. I'm not saying that Elon's looking like a dumbass will make him actually lose value, and I don't particularly care. I just want people to hate on him because it's a focus point. I keep using the example of Marie Antoinette, but it's a meme, a focus point that gets people realizing their immediate problem and the illegitimacy of their rulers. They're not Iron Man. Elon Musk is stupider than the average fucking person. That's just how it is. I don't even need to clarify that because I think it's really obvious at this point.
Been saying the end of Tesla is coming for a while, but I am increasingly finding it persuasive the folks who are saying that the big automakers get involved is going to wipe him out, and he knows it, and so he's desperate.
That's why he was obsessively like trying to get his charging stations to be exclusive. Yeah.
Remember when
yeah, the one patent he actually has his name on is the plug-in, because he wants to make it a monopoly.
Biden did that whole EV thing, and he invited those I think the unionized, as Biden liked to say. One of the more base things Biden said was in his little spat with Elon, says like, yeah, we got some companies that are making EVs unionized workforces, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, man, sometimes he can be so good it makes you wonder, like, how it's so bad.
I feel like when he gets to be off the cuff and impulsive, that's when you get the good stuff. But when he's deliberating for years and years about student debt or, you know, I need to talk to my
Yeah, Biden is so old, I don't think he's capable of doing any action. That's just how it is. He's definitely not an ally of the left at all. I mean, he can say this or that, but he's gonna, I think essentially I've never seen him do anything but throw up obstacles, to be honest. Oh, is there anything else to watch? I don't know, I'm just clip trolling. Is this content? Why not, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson's the worst kind of Elon Musk fanboy. Oh no, I don't want to dislike Elon or Neil deGrasse Tyson. No, I don't know much about him, to be honest. I watch a lot of PBS Space Time, but I don't really follow individual professors like that or anything. It's not my bag. That clip's probably true though. There's a lot of people who like Elon because they think he's actually doing any of the stuff that he makes like flashy. Divorce levels over 9,000. It doesn't interest me so much, but I'm sure it's true. Yes, there's so many clips here that are just like, I want to click on them, but like there's only so much time. Crowder was always cringe. I've seen some of Crowder's older clips. They're pretty bad. I think Cody Shoddy's main point about Crowder was that he's an eternal cosplayer. And nowadays he's just cosplaying as a guy who has like guns in his holsters and as a right winger. Like he doesn't even. I think there's a woman who refused to go on his show because he even said to her that it was like kind of phony or implied it, and he was just doing it to like get clicks. And she was like a true believer. There are a few true believers in the right wing circuits, right? That's a thing. They're rare. I'll tell you who's not. Joe Rogan's. Joe Rogan's not after money, he's definitely after developing like a circle of sycophants that can just basically flatter him constantly. Jordan Peterson is entirely motivated by money. He like was from the get-go. And like I could provide examples to support that, but he's not a true believer. I'm not gonna do that right now because it's too much work. It's like a topic for like a whole video. Steven Crowder is not a true believer. He's in it for the money. Almost everyone on the right is just totally motivated by money. It's quite easy to tell. You can just based on their actions. Ben Shapiro is one of the few people who is just a greasy, socially conservative, orthodox, like religious believer, and he actually is a true believer. He lies about stuff constantly. He says he implies he's a libertarian very often when he's not. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't really even know anything about it. But there is like a core of actual fervor and belief to what he does. That doesn't mean I like him. I think he's a greaseball, but whatever. Wasn't he? Oh, he did actually comment on Kanye hating on Jewish people and managed to kind of barely criticize him for it. I forget what he said. I don't really care. Oh, the Elon Musk Twitter polls. Should I step down? He asked about the doxing and everyone gave him the response he didn't want. I'm surprised he didn't just rig it, honestly. Like, I wouldn't have cared either way, but it's kind of funny. He didn't even bother to rig it. Should the left abandon Twitter? Obviously you want an out, right? So you can use both platforms. You don't think you need to abandon it, but whatever. You're gonna need multiple platforms these days. You have to jump around depending on which billionaire you want to criticize them that morning. Is that how it's gonna be in the future? You shit on Elon and Twitch, and then you go on Twitter to shit on Jeff Bezos? Probably. We'll use their disjointedness against them, for sure. Though, yeah, the event of Elon going to the Dave Chappelle show and getting booed. That's very funny. Christian Walker. I don't know much about that. Let's go see if there's any cool Asanabi clips again. I don't think there is. Kind of running out of energy. I'm just browsing randomly. Today it's just like a guinea pig political stream. This is not serious or important. I have no schedule and no plan. This is the Andrew Tate debate. I don't really care to watch that. I think it's a good thing that he did it because Andrew Tate was becoming so popular that he received almost no pushback. And I think providing people with alternative ways of thinking, especially impressionable young men, to be frank, is a good thing to do. That was Hassan's reasoning. I agree with it. But I think the debate itself is obviously fairly dumb. Alright, this is the creator clash fight. Joe Rogan thinks it's like a real fight between a father and a son because he's a dumbass. I think he gets corrected, but still. I did watch the boxing matches. The chess boxing happened recently. I think I talked about that earlier. It's pretty fun. Vosh. I just know Vosh is a dumbass. That might be like simplifying it so much, but honestly, it's just how I feel about him. Elon Musk. Oh yeah, the Elon Musk talking to software engineers and they answer basic questions and he just mutes them. Pokemon thick moments? No. Well, I don't need to make that the centerpiece of my content. What is this? Nepo babies. That's something only Hassan would care about. It's content, I guess. Takes the autism test. Joe Rogan destroys Ben Shapiro. I watched the first part of this. What was Ben Shapiro talking about was the religious perspective of why gay people shouldn't have gay marriage. I didn't really find that interesting. It's dumb, obviously. Another debate. Wonder what Andrew Tate got arrested for. It's interesting. I don't really care though. The guy's a super dumbass. It's fine to confront crazy shit like that for a bit, but I'll leave that up to the big streamers. It's like pretty much everybody agrees that like he tweets such insane shit that it's like, is it even worth addressing? It's just like he's obviously just trying to get attention. Man. I don't think I'm going to find any good clips to watch. I should go to my actual feed. I'm not logged in right now. But I'm not going to do it. The Twitter purge. I think I've seen this already.
To it, though. Elon Musk is being an absolute dickhead, permanently banning Jack Sweeney, who ran the Elon Jets account. Elon Musk, of course, famously originally said his commitment to free speech was so consistent, so absolute that like even the Elon Jet account was not going to be banned, except that was a lie because
that was never gonna happen.
Because now it is banned. Yeah, here it is. My commitment to free speech extends even to not banning the account following my plane, even though that is a direct personal safety risk, which is bullshit. Literally everyone can.
The thing about the plane, and probably everybody knows this already, but the account that posts it on the internet uses publicly available data that anyone has access to anyways. So
track his plane. And also, the only points of entry that someone can like reach you while you're because they know where your plane is like a public space that it's like saying, I can't believe you're tracking my plane. I'm oh wow, you're gonna go to LAX.
I think Elon sent a Twitter message or like a direct message. I forget what it was, but he said he was afraid of some. Oh yeah, he asked the guy nicely to take down that page that was doxing his plane, or whatever you want to say. And in it he said, I don't relish the thought, or some whatever, however he put it, of getting shot by some nutcase. And I'm like, I believe him only on that part that he actually is afraid of that, and yeah, as well he should be because he's a fucking asshole. That's why capitalists traditionally do not go into the limelight, is because it does put you at risk for that.
Like, is that what you mean? Is that what you're talking about? Anyway, team, please apply heavy VF to Elon Jet immediately, says Ella Irwin. Like, this was internal communications. He was trying to get the account, like, shadow banned, which he did. And then they were posting about it. Jack Sweeney was posting about how he did get shadow banned. And then they unshadow banned him, only to ban every one of his accounts, including all the accounts that are now apparently following jets, publicly available information, following billionaire private jets. So that's cool, including Russian oligarch billionaire private jets, by the way. So just remember that. Yeah, by the way, Elon has literally admitted to implementing max deboosting, which is shadow banning, as I mentioned before. I tweeted about this back in the day when he first posted about this. New Twitter policy is freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. It's just shadow banning. You literally just called shadow banning something different and said that you're openly going to do it whenever the vibes are off.
Yeah, which is fucked. I mean, obviously that's messed up.
Negative hate tweets will be max deboosted, demonetized, so no ads or revenue to Twitter. You won't find the tweet unless you specifically seek it out, which is no different from the rest of the internet. But also, like I said, he took down the fucking jet trackers, which is going to frustrate people. Basically, what I was trying to describe to you.
I don't know if it happens at this point, but he shuts down journalists from like major news outlets as well, just because he doesn't like them.
Is that Elon Musk took over Twitter and very pettily and in like the most open, brazen way possible has been behaving in a corrupt tyrant capacity. But because everything is political, even though billionaires transcend politics towards the right, of course, but certainly lean towards the right heavily, a lot of these fucking dick riders don't recognize that or do recognize it and are showing that they are interested in simply utilizing free speech until, as a talking point, until they can just, ban the opposition, silence the opposition.
A big piece on the board when it came to doing the French Revolution was the printing press. And there was street violence based around who could print in the printing press. There would literally be armed thugs coming around smashing printing presses if you didn't agree with whoever was in power. Will the internet turn into a certain place where people go to? Because I don't think it's the same kind of mechanism, right? But like, will people actually find alternative forms to stay connected despite the fact that these crackdowns are happening? I can point everyone to the Tor browser. That helps. Unfortunately, I can't really recommend DuckDuckGo. People have said that it's actually pretty right-leaning when it comes to websites that it decides to ban. And also, it's just kind of not good. Like, DuckDuckGo is very useless right now. So, I mean, you're kind of stuck with Google, but it is what it is. I don't like most of what Google does nowadays. I love how their original company slogan was "Don't become evil," and then they eventually got rid of that. Wow, who could have seen that coming? Like, I was a kid and I knew that was gonna fucking happen years ago. It's like, dude, of course it's gonna happen. I'm surprised they didn't do AI facial recognitions in the drones that one time. They probably are doing it under the table now, though. Like, somebody's doing it, also, probably. Or they have a shell company doing it. Who the fuck knows? Like, who has time to track everything the company does?
It's hilarious watching his defenders moving the goalpost for him every time without skipping a beat. Yeah, it's just like, at this point, I don't hate Elon Musk as much as I hate his followers and his fans. I'm not going to lie. I hate Elon Musk's fans more than Elon Musk because, like,
well, I love Elon Musk haters more than I hate his fans.
Like, they are willingly fucking throwing their bodies into the pyre. You know, they're like, oh, yeah, no, Elon, I will lift you up. Here, I'll throw my body directly at the problem. I will defend you. I will defend your honor. It's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? This guy doesn't give a shit about you. he would literally melt you into biomatter, and you fucking do.
That makes me think of Cruelty Squad so much, because they literally do that in there. Man, I want to play more Cruelty Squad, but it was like the least amount of clicks for any video. I guess it's just so not mainstream. One day, I'll get some people. Cruelty Squad's like my favorite game. Okay, I'm obsessed with it. At me. Go ahead. One day I'll get people playing Cruelty Squad. Or at least watching Cruelty Squad. But I feel like I had to shelve it because it just wasn't getting very many clicks. It's too out there. Play Cruelty Squad. Or better yet, encourage me to play it and then watch me play it. Because I want to play it. I need an excuse. Please. Please. I beg.
Deserve it, okay? You deserve it for being the dumbest
Me?
person
Oh,
alive.
not me.
It's fucking nasty and insane and scary.
Oh,
that,
Crowder.
now
Oh, my
we're
lord.
We're at this stage we're supposed to choose between like which individual billionaire and their own personal pet project corresponds to your worldview. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
That's what it's
one
boiled down to.
billionaire, Elon Musk, owns Twitter, so I'll go to the other billionaire's platform, YouTube, to be able to talk shit. Or I'll go to another billionaire, Jeff Bezos' platform, Twitch, to talk shit about Elon Musk. Can't do it on Twitter, but I'll do it on Twitch. And I can't talk shit about Jeff Bezos on Twitch because that's his platform, so I got to go to Twitter to do that. It's like, it's fucking crazy. It's crazy that, like, every part of your existence is carefully documented, calculated, under constant surveillance, and you know, billionaires have all access and all control if they want to abuse it and use it. And they can very openly showcase their corporate dictatorship. They can openly showcase their
I am maybe an idiot, but I believe that showcasing their dictatorship is the greatest weakness they have right now, personally. But I could be a complete idiot for thinking that. Maybe it's just my vain hope. I believe in provocation, and I've been wrong about many things in my life, but I do at this current moment, for some reason, still believe that provocation is the way to go.
Disdain for you, and you can't really do anything about it. Okay, doomer lol. What do you mean doomer? This is where we're at. This is the reality. This is what we're living under. It's ironic to consider, especially because, like, I mean, most other tech CEOs haven't even done
Doomer. No. I think it's great. I want them to become fucking censorious and dictatorial because it will force alternate printing presses to shoot up, ones that are hypercritical of them, and that they have to send FBI agents to shut down. And let me tell you, the FBI has never been successful at chasing servers around the globe and shutting them down. They're terrible at it. How many times has Pirate Bay been shut down? I don't even know. Probably more than you could count with, like, your hands and your toes, I'm sure. And it has done nothing. They've even locked up some of the owners, and someone else takes up the flag, kind of literal flag almost, of Pirate Bay. Looking at that, you can say, yeah, if there's alternative media sites that are leftist focused, they're going to have a hell of a time putting them out. And it's going to look oppressive. I don't know. Maybe that's my vain hope because I've lost all other hope for the normal vehicle towards reform and progress. Because I am so, how did that guy put it? Resigned. There's a guy in Red Dead Redemption 2. He's like, calls his group of criminals the discouraged men. Well, okay, how about discouraged people? Because we're not living in 1901 or wherever it takes place. But yeah, I am one of those people. I'm just like, I'll latch on to anything. Like, yeah, provoke them. Get the fucking boot to come down, because that's the only way that I like. And I could be totally wrong, to be honest, but I feel like that's the way that you get people to actually do resistance. I don't know. Just a thought.
on this to that degree, okay? Mark Zuckerberg is a fucking lizard, okay? Not a real human being, doesn't do it to the same degree that Elon does. Jeff Bezos.
True, they know their place still a little bit.
Doesn't do it to the same degree as Elon Musk does. Elon Musk is very...
Jeff Bezos just creates rings of power and sticks in pro-lithium mining, basically rhetoric and drama into that show. It makes the Elf King look like himself. That's all he does.
Basically
Which I don't know if that's effective, but it's kind of clever.
opening the floodgates.
I don't think it
and saying,
matters
no,
as
I
much
can
as
do
they
whatever
think,
the fuck
though.
I want. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, which is a dumb move. I actually hate how Twitter's getting shut down recently because how are we supposed to see what a dumbass he is? Like, it would be so much better if you could.
Next, dude, how many years until they can just like openly start murking motherfuckers and just saying that they're openly murking motherfuckers? Stop Elon Musk hate facade.
Hassan doesn't realize that that's I think it's never in history been that the powerful people have like murked people. If you think about the Bolshevik revolution, a lot of Lenin's family members were killed, but they were just hung semi-officially by the aristocracy. The U.S. has already done that during, like I already talked about this earlier in the stream, during the 60s wave of violence and political violence. Like the police literally killed people. They locked up a lot of people. Can't remember the trial. There's like the trial of the 5 people. It's like a documentary on Netflix is a good example of that as well. Yeah.
Why do you hate Elon? You hating on Elon, man. Leave my man alone. Dude, he doesn't know you. He doesn't know you. You are nothing to him. You are just dying for no reason. Like, you can keep him, you can glaze him up all you want as he's like hemorrhaging money. But you are just basically begging at the altar, praying for a tech feudalism where Elon Musk is manning the helm. That's so weird. Every time I see stuff like this, it just hurts my brain because I just expect people to at least be human. One of the most normal human conditions is to unironically look at like positions of power like this and see people abusing it and recognize that abuse as wrong and unjust and inappropriate. And yet, time and time again, he will show me that no, they are fucking, they want to be peasants.
So is Hassan one of those people who think culture's the problem? Because we were just watching a video that pushed back on that a little bit. Hassan has been an excellent ally to the community. No one can deny that. But yeah, he's obviously not a grassroots guy, as far as I know. Hassan doesn't realize like how much more privileged he is. Like he knows because people constantly remind him and harass him about him buying a house, which I don't think was a big deal, but whatever. But he doesn't really understand how much above everybody else he is. Like he watches like billionaire TikTok videos and I think he feels small when he watches them. And like that feeling of feeling small is what the average viewer feels like when they watch Hassan. And I don't think he fully grasps that. Not as I don't mean to impugn his character. I think he's a great guy, and the lack of empathy in here is simply. It doesn't, and it also doesn't matter. Like he's still a great ally and a wonderful class trader. Salute him for that. But yeah, like I don't think he has the capacity to really get calls of arms to happen, and I'm hoping that other stuff in Twitch develops. Ferments, grows, that actually gets real action off the ground. Of course, you know, you started in Twitch, and I think the idea is that you have multiple platforms that, so if like one gets smoked by elites or whatever, or starts trying to like offer you a raw deal, you can just switch. But
they want to be serfs. They want to be slaves. Like they like.
There's a small proportion of people who are like that. I do agree, but. I think he's exaggerating.
They like the system and the way that it's designed. There's comfort in that. And
most of the people he's talking about are middle class or lower middle class at the least. At the most bottom end of that scale. Because they could be like middle class in decay where their parents are like pretty well off, but their prospects are not quite as good and they're just trying to fit in. Pretty much, I imagine that's how it is. Who knows?
They will be the the Fedayeen to uphold these unjustifiable structures rather than take a deep breath and think about the situation Elon Jet should have been banned. They clearly violated terms of service. Yeah. Be nice to Elon Musk. Cock blocking. The future of humanity depends on Elon single-handedly populating Mars. Cock blocking Elon is a crime against humanity. Dealer's choice. Elon spends up to 14 hours a day browsing Twitter, and he sees a lot of tweets. Posting a picture of him and Ghislaine Maxwell. Posting a picture of him where he was balding. Didn't Elon tweet about this account specifically when he bought Twitter and that he's not going to ban it? Yeah, and then he decided against it. Which, by the way, you can do that. That's what happens when you are omega rich. Like, he's blocking links to the Elon Musk Jet Instagram account, which he calls potentially harmful. What islands is he visiting with his private jet that he is so scared that people will track his jet? People always like to rush and say, oh, it's the Streisand effect. It's the Streisand effect. Well, I don't think so, because if he controls the fucking flow of information on one of the most popular social media platforms, like, you're getting effectively deplatformed. And yeah, Elon Musk's former claim, my commitment to free speech extends even not banning the account following my plane, even though that is a direct personal safety risk. Yeah, he banned it. So he got community clapped here.
It's almost like he's the kind of person who specifically says he won't do something right before he does it as a way to cover his own ass. Like a pathological liar in youth, still growing. Sort of what that says to me. I think in the back of his mind, of course, he always was going to ban it. Or wanted
Which, by
to.
the way, the more this happens, just wait. Elon Musk, if he keeps getting fact-checked by the community, he's going to take this away too. Mark my fucking words. He's either going to take it away or make it so that no one can, no one can community fact-check him any longer. Just wait. Yeah, he is banning all the flight tracking pages. Yes, it appears all automated flight tracking accounts utilizing open source data have been banned from Twitter, including the "Are You Oligarch Jets." That's gonna piss off the libs, dude. This man is doing something that is so incredibly petty that it will upend like an entire fucking part of the platform. Okay, there's a lot of open source information sharing that happens on Twitter. It is a big.
I think we're pretty much gonna stop with this little experiment soon, but it's about the Japanese religious cult that the assassin dude who killed Shinzo Abe, his mother got drawn into it and like lost all her money or something. It's kind of interesting. I want to learn more about the cult. I think are they the Moonies, or is that just related to them? I don't know. Anyways, I think that's enough for now. Just thought I would do some light-hearted dumbass reaction stuff. Maybe we'll do some higher quality content after that later, but it is what it is. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick little second to talk about what games to do next. Maybe High on Life, maybe. Earthbound 2 still on the list. I say this every time, but just to recap. Maybe Jet Set Radio. It's pretty anti-establishment, I'd say. Yeah, we'll see. Christmas dinner tomorrow may not be streaming, but we'll see. If I don't stream tomorrow, we'll have regularly scheduled streaming right after that. I'm trying to shoot from anywhere from 12 to 3 p.m. I don't have an exact set time right now, but it'll start to become solidified. Don't you worry about that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tolerating the scatterbrainedness of the stream. Hope you found something interesting. I hope that main video sparked some interest, because I thought it was made me think about my worldview a little bit for sure. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.